Hey guys.
Hey everybody.
How are
Hi.
you?
We are back with our newest book, which is Good Energy by Casey Means, MD. And boy, it is good.
It is very good.
I am
Yeah,
loving it.
different style of writing, I think, than what we've been experiencing before, and more like personal anecdotal
Yeah.
part of it. Yeah, sharing personal experiences and experiences with patients, which is I like. It breaks up the
Oh, I like
science.
that too. It
Yeah.
makes it very relatable.
I think
Mm-hmm.
that she has a good balance of just being a compassionate human. And of course, she's very highly intelligent. So
Oh yeah,
it's a
you
good
can
mix,
tell that.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
brilliant.
definitely.
She really is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what all this book entails, and I see she's not she's not necessarily in alignment completely with us as far as diet, but I think that's okay. I think that we have a lot we can learn from what she is going to share with us in the book.
From what I gather from listening to her talking to like Dr. Barry and others, I kind of get the impression that she is, she's okay with the proper human diet spectrum, but maybe
Yeah,
she doesn't necessarily believe that that's the only way.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Which is and honestly, everybody's on their own journey when it comes to learning what helps with metabolic health.
yeah,
And, we know that when you're very, very metabolically unhealthy, the lower carb you can go, the better,
yeah,
because
exactly.
you can get healing from getting rid of all the processed foods, getting rid of the
Mhm.
sugar. But at some point, if you're really metabolically unhealthy, you're going to have to get rid of the rest of the carbs too, because your
Yeah.
healing is going to be slow, or it's going to kind of come to a stop, and you're only going to get so far, at least for a lot of us.
I feel
So
like, you know, it's kind of nice to get out of the whole echo chamber of, the PhD carnivore kind of thing too. There are things that we can learn from other people, and we can
absolutely,
apply it to our situation, to our preference of, our way of eating. Um, you know,
absolutely,
so
yeah, definitely.
And I think
So
we can all agree that getting rid of the seed oils, the grains, the sugar, that is a huge step no matter which dietary path you decide to take. And
right,
honestly, it seems to me that a lot of people take the same path, like they start out that way, then they just gradually, I mean, I think many, many people do end up in the proper human diet spectrum. It's just,
I think so too.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
almost a
definitely.
natural progression.
Yeah, and and there's a bunch of us who went keto
I did.
and experienced some health benefits, and made some progress, and then we just kind of realized, well, we're going to have to go even more low carb, and in order to move things forward. And like with me, even just carnivore wasn't enough. I needed to go lion diet. So it really just depends on your own individual health.
hmm
Yeah,
But there's material here for everybody,
yeah, for sure.
yes,
and everybody is welcome.
That's right.
absolutely, yes.
And I am
So
trying to stream on Facebook right now, but I don't think it's working. I don't know where it is that I'm streaming,
You could be streaming to Mars.
but it's obviously not to my page that I wanted to stream on. So,
oh,
womp womp. I'm checking it and
wah,
it's
wah.
like there's nothing there's nothing showing up. So, it's going somewhere out in the ether, I guess.
All right. Well, hopefully
Anyway,
it's at least going to going to your YouTube account. So
hmm
so okay, so let's see here. Oh, so I think my description says chapters 1 and 2, but just so that people aren't confused, what we did was we are doing the introduction and chapter 1 because these chapters are completely packed with info. So just
and for in all honesty, this was a decision made within the last, hour and a half.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I woke up this morning and started listening to my 2 chapters. I've had some time off. I'm on my other 2 weeks off right now, and so I've just been kind of hanging out and taking it easy. And so this morning I had to go get the actual physical book, which I usually don't do. I usually have it on well, not Audible, but oh, Carrie, what is it?
Kindle.
Amazon Kindle. Yeah.
You got your Kindle. Yeah.
Yeah. So usually I have it on there, but this book is not on there. So I had to actually go and buy it. And I've been highlighting in it and stuff. And then I just kept highlighting so much in the introduction alone that I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. Chapter 1, I was taking notes in the margins and looking stuff up. And I'm like, are we even going to get past chapter 1? And I was thinking that, but then Kim sends this message out today, like,
yeah, I'm like, guys,
maybe
this is a
stop
lot.
after chapter 1.
So, I love how she started out the introduction, and she tells us a little about like her personal stuff, like why she got into this. She, well, we can talk about, what she did and what she was and everything. But basically she completed, Lynn, you want to give the details of that because you're better at details. It's like she completed her residency. I think she was like her 5th year.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a
we
few
can,
months
if you want to
short
go, if you
of
want to go with
completing.
what her credentials were, she talked about her even from birth, how she was a very large infant and some issues with her childhood, which we can go back and talk about. But she did talk about how she had been, I was really surprised. I should probably go find it. In the section where she talks about waking up, I didn't realize how accomplished she really was.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to, but I don't remember exactly where it's all at.
So at age 16, she had an internship with the National Institutes of Health. She was president of her Stanford class at age 18. She got her undergraduate in human biology. She got a best undergraduate human biology thesis award at age 21. She was the top of her Stanford medical school class at 25 and a surgical resident in ear, nose, and throat surgery at the Oregon Health and Science University by age 26, and winner of an ENT research award at age 30. She'd been published in premier medical journals, presented her research at national conferences, and she said she spent thousands of lonely nights studying, was the pride of her family, and it was her entire identity. So this was like, she was incredibly accomplished and obviously highly, highly intelligent.
Yeah, we're not just talking like your average doctor here. We're talking like Stanford, top of her class. Yeah. She wasn't just sliding by in medical school.
She didn't get C's in medical school.
Right. Exactly.
And I probably had to invent a new grade level for her.
Although I'm not judging anyone who did.
But I used to joke that the town that I grew up in, I used to joke that all the doctors there got C's in medical school because it was like just a really boring town, and I know it couldn't attract the greatest doctors.
Well, sometimes the smaller towns will actually pay a lot more for doctors to come.
You would think so, because they've got to attract good doctors, but we live close enough to, like, as it was in California, people would go to San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
They really needed care. But anyways, she talked about how she was actually 5 years into it sounds like it's 5 years into a residency, and she said months away completing her residency. And
she had received offers to be like a professor in medical schools and stuff.
Oh yeah, she had an incredibly bright future ahead of her. But she ended up with a patient that just kind of like a light bulb moment for her, because this woman had come in and she had all these issues with sinusitis, she operated on her. She broke up the bones, swollen tissues, and her sinus passages. And this woman was very grateful for her, told her that you saved me. And she said she did not feel proud. She felt defeated because she knew that did not really heal this patient. She hadn't gotten to the root cause of why did this woman have this chronic inflammation in her sinuses, and as well as other health problems that she had.
Mhm.
And so she started feeling like that there's all of this there must be an unrelated cause. And in the work she was doing, she wasn't getting to it. And the system she was working in really didn't allow her to even go down that path. So she ended up, she said, September of 2018, on my 31st birthday, and just months shy of completing my 5-year residency, I walked into the chairman's office at OHSU and quit. She said, with a wall full of honors and awards and honors for my clinical and research performance, and with prominent hospital systems pursuing me for mid-six-figure faculty roles, I walked out of the hospital and embarked on a journey to understand the real reasons why people get sick and to figure out how to help patients restore and sustain their health. So that was pretty abrupt, and I think courageous, to be honest, for her to do that.
Yeah,
because
super. I mean, there are people who, take themselves out of this world because they think that they have failed after something like that, and she had the
Right.
courage to completely just change her whole life, her whole trajectory, and just forge a new path for herself, really.
And this is
And
after a
she had
$500,000.
that's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah. She had
$500,000.
$500,000 in school debt.
Wow, that is insane.
But
Yeah.
it conflicted with her values. There was something within her that just said, this does not seem right. And she has the gifted brain to put that together, which
Yeah.
to me is just phenomenal. She was able to see the woman, Sophia, that she used as an example, had depression and chronic fatigue and just all these other issues. And so while the woman was grateful that she had fixed her sinus issues at the moment, she knew that Sophia was going to be back with that, and also was going to be continuing to go to these other doctors because she also talked about, how there's such a narrow focus in specialty. Like even within ENT, there's subsections. And so everything is just so siloed, and it's like they don't even really talk to each other. It's just it's down to symptoms.
Yeah, I really noticed that years ago,
Mm-hmm.
that it was just so fragmented, and I just thought, am I the only one that sees this? I understand why they went to the specialties because the body's just so complex, but I think when they went to the specialties, they overdid it,
Mm-hmm.
and you have your internal medicine doctor or your um, general practice or whatever, and they are supposed to be the ones to bring it all together, but their hands are tied by time limits. I mean, just all of this stuff that they have to get through. Like I said, I always feel like my doctor's visit is more for them than it is for me, because they're just like, have checking all their boxes, and I'm like, what about me? Um, but I feel like none of them are talking to each other. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I could be wrong about that. I'm sure they're sending their reports, but the time is probably not there to sit down and just actually, you'd have to study a person. You'd have to spread all those reports out and put things together and, connect the dots. And I don't think that that's humanly possible for
Right.
any doctor to
Yeah.
do, because of the limits of the system.
Well, and it's kind of a catch-22 with the big like groups like where I used to work before I had to retire, it was a very, very large multi-clinic regional medical group with all, it had primary care, but it had all the specialties, and our doctors had hospital privileges and worked in the hospitals as well. But, you know, there you can have a primary doctor and you could see who could refer you to specialists that are all within the same, you know, group, and they report right back to your primary. And I used to explain to our patients, you know, that was like it's like a wagon wheel, and your primary doctor is the hub of the wheel, and all the specialties are the spokes, and they all are supposed to lead back to your primary doctor, right? And so your primary doctor is supposed to put all the pieces together for you, which I don't know how often that happens. But the flip side of being a part of that group is that they're so algorithm based. They have to go by the corporate guidelines. And so there's two sides to the coin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to get a doctor who really has the freedom to think outside the box, you're going to have to go to someone more in private practice. But then there aren't those connections. If you need to see a specialist, it's not as easy. So it's, you know, our healthcare system, what are you going to say, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's working for anybody. You know, I don't think it's working for us, the patients, and I don't think it's working for the doctors.
No, I think a lot of doctors are terribly unhappy.
Yeah. Like how many doctors feel the way she feels, but have just gotten to the point where they can't leave it.
Yeah,
they might have $500,000 worth of student loans that they have to pay off, you know, if nothing else. And that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
And I don't envy them that. I have compassion for them, because that's a very tight spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, so she talks about her early life, and she said she weighed 11 pounds, 9 ounces at birth. And I guess wherever she lived, she said that her mom's doctors congratulated her for producing one of the largest babies in the hospital's history. But she also knew that that was a sign of things going wrong in her mom's body. And her mom ended up years later dying of pancreatic cancer. And so she does talk a little bit about some of the early signs. And she commented on how her mom, the doctors always told her mom she was healthy. Even though she had these issues, she had various issues, but her mom, the doctors told her mom she was healthy.
Yeah, and she said that she didn't develop pre-diabetes until she was in her 60s, which, you know, we know by all the other signs that she was not metabolically healthy. And we know that you can have pre-diabetes for like 20 years and it not even be caught by your medical provider.
Yeah.
So, hey, Russ.
Hi, Russ. Good to see you. Hope you're staying cool.
Yeah.
So she had issues. So they said in her mom's in the 50s, she had high triglycerides, low HDL, high LDL. She was on a statin in her 50s. This is her mom, right? And in her 60s, it was when she had developed the pre-diabetes. They put her on metformin. And so she was obviously not healthy, but her doctors were telling her that she was actually pretty healthy. One of the things she talked about is she's looking at like what's wrong with the way we treat patients. She brought about some statistics about teenagers I thought were interesting.
Oh yeah, I highlighted that also.
Yeah, she said I was surprised about the fatty liver. She said 18% of teenagers have fatty liver disease.
Crazy.
That is
it's gotta be all the fructose.
It
But then
is,
you
yeah.
think, though, you see the moms giving the kids all this fruit juice because they think that's good for them. So I mean, when you really
Yeah.
stop and think about it, I'm surprised it's not more. But
Yeah. And close
Yeah.
to 30% are pre-diabetic in their teens.
Mhm.
And 40% are overweight or obese. So, I mean, that's really bleak for our teens. Like
Yeah.
crazy.
And then it went on to say today, young adults exist in a culture where conditions such as obesity, acne, fatigue, depression, infertility, high cholesterol, or prediabetes are common. Also, 6 out of 10 adults are living with chronic illness. About 50% of Americans will deal with mental illness sometime in their life, and 74% of adults are overweight or have obesity. 74%.
That's crazy.
I know.
That is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, if that doesn't show you, like, I feel like somebody somewhere needs to be looking at this stuff and saying, what is going on? You know,
Right.
who's in charge of looking at this
What
stuff?
we're doing.
I think a lot of people are. It's just that it's people who aren't high enough in the food chain looking at
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a huge grassroots movement, which is encouraging to me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we can be in our own little bubble. And it's like when I had that real age test. I mean, it just stunned me, and I don't know why, but it stunned me that they used that old criteria, from 40 years ago. It's just like, but that's still the way it is.
Yeah. It's, the people up high, I feel like they just keep turning a blind eye because of the money, and because they don't want to upset the apple cart. So they keep putting it on. Oh no, people are just, they're just lazy. They won't exercise. They just keep blaming it on the people.
They can't
Right.
moderate their food intake. They eat too much.
Well, and it's also, and I don't know if you've experienced this or not, Kim, but I have actually heard the whole thing of, well, they say they're eating really healthy and they're not eating all this stuff, but they're not losing weight or their health is still bad. So they're not being honest.
Yeah, I find that most people in the medical
lazy, but
field,
they're actually lying.
Yeah, I find that most people in the medical field that I have dealt with just at work, just have a pessimistic view of like what patients are actually doing.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, they won't do that. That kind of whole attitude.
Well, and you hear it all the time when it comes to, like, however much alcohol they say they're drinking, you need to at least double it, right?
Yeah, we had a formula for that.
Yeah.
And while that might be true a lot of the times, because it's human nature to not own up to that kind of thing. I feel like this is a completely different thing. It's a completely different animal altogether. When you're talking about what kind of diet are you eating? I mean, me personally, I'm not going to just make up and be like, oh yeah, I'm just eating, chicken and low fat Greek yogurt. I'm not gonna do that. Nobody ever asked me that.
Right. Right.
That's part of the problem.
Well, and there's also times where people will say, oh, I'm eating a really healthy diet, and then nobody actually asks them to provide the details.
What is a healthy diet?
Right, because that's very subjective.
It's extremely subjective. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, but one other thing I underlined, which I thought was a good thing to at least be reminded of, is she said there is a better way, and it starts with understanding that the biggest lie in healthcare is that the root cause of why we're getting sicker, heavier, and more depressed and more infertile is complicated. And because it's actually simple. And I think that when healthcare, it does become complicated because I think that the healthcare providers make it complicated.
I think that there's so many factors to it, like you have the problem with the doctors not asking what foods you're eating. You have the problem with the foods that we have in our grocery stores being horrible. You have the problem with people not being educated about that horrible food, because if we were educated on it, we wouldn't buy it. If we didn't buy it, then the whole system would just fall apart, basically.
Yeah. And it's more than a lack of education. It's also being subjected to a lot of propaganda and wrong information about
Yeah.
nutrition.
And
Well,
then
and they're
And
telling
too.
people that this stuff is good for you, and it's cheaper to eat this than to, you know what I'm saying? Like they're talking about it in terms of like economics for like, say, families who are struggling or on assistance or whatever. Well, see, we give this to them, these grains and whatever, and it's making them worse, but it's in the name of feeding people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of other things I had underlined were preventable lifestyle conditions are responsible for 80% of modern human deaths. That is insane.
Yeah.
Depression, anxiety, acne, infertility, insomnia, heart disease, erectile dysfunction, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, and most other conditions that torture and shorten our lives are actually rooted in the same thing.
Yeah.
And that all centers around inappropriate chronic inflammation. And wherever
Right.
it is in the body, it may bother your body more in your brain. It may bother my body more, in my immune system, or as arthritis, or whatever. And it says we have 200 different types of cells in the body, and when bad energy shows up in different cell types, different symptoms can arise. Bad energy can look like depression, stroke, dementia, migraine, or chronic pain, depending where these dysfunctional cellular processes are prominently showing up. We treat the organ-specific results of the bad energy, not the bad energy itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we should probably talk a little bit about how she defines good energy versus bad energy, because she uses those terms a lot. And obviously the book is called Good Energy.
Yeah.
And so I found that reading it, I'm kind of having to kind of get used to her different terminology.
Yeah.
But my understanding of it is that she's referring to cellular metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
And the good energy is when the cell is functioning properly and it's producing the ATP, which is the energy, the fuel of our, of our cell, that the cell produces, is the ATP. And so good energy is a properly functioning cell and a mitochondria that's doing what it's supposed to do properly and producing the ATP to fuel your body, give your body the energy it needs to function. Bad energy is when there's improper functioning of the cell and the mitochondria due to a variety of factors.
Yeah.
And it could be your diet, it can be other environmental factors, it could be, toxic exposures, it could be stress, there's all sorts of stuff that could cause your cell. And she talks about how when your cell is exposed to something, that it basically sends off like a panic alarm out to your body, which recruits your immune system to come to its rescue, but that creates the inflammation. And so that was kind of my understanding of her, what good energy is versus bad energy is. She's talking about it on a cellular, if not even a mitochondrial level.
Yeah, definitely a mitochondrial level. I'm going to read just a bit about this so that people can understand, because I feel like it'll really help. So she really defines good energy, and then she says, then she starts talking about bad energy. So really, if we can just define,
what page are you on?
It's the introduction XI.
Okay, 11.
And
Okay.
it's the title. It's the title. It's the title, Good Energy. I want to
Okay.
share a vision of health that is big and bold. It predicates health and longevity on something simple, powerful, and absolutely fundamental. A single uh, physiological phenomenon that can change almost everything about how you feel and function today and in the future. It's called good energy, and the reason it has such a life-changing impact is that it governs the essence of what quite literally makes you tick. Whether your cells have the energy to do their jobs of keeping you nourished, clear-minded, hormonally balanced, immune protected, heart healthy, structurally sound, and so much more. Having good energy is the core underlying physiological function that, more than any other process in your body, determines your predilection to a great mental and physical health or to poor health and disease. Good energy is also known as metabolic health. Metabolism refers to the set of cellular mechanisms that transform food into energy that can power every single cell in your body. You might not have thought much about whether or not you have good energy. When cellular energy production is working well, you don't have to think about it or be conscious of it. It just is. Your body has an exquisite set of mechanisms that make good energy happen every second of every day. These cellular mechanisms create sustained and balanced energy, distribute it to every cell in your body, clean up the residues from the process that would otherwise clog up the system. Let's see here. I'm going to skip down a paragraph here. It says, when you lose the keys to good energy, however, so much starts to go wrong. Organs, tissues, and glands are, after all, mere collections of cells. Lose the capacity for properly and safely powering those cells, and no real surprise, the organs made up of them start to struggle and fail. This means that just about any disease can arise as a result. And today, given the pressures that good energy is under, that's exactly what's occurring. The problem, simply stated, is a mismatch. The metabolic processes that run our bodies evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in a synergistic relationship with the environment around us. But those environmental conditions around the cells of our bodies have profoundly and rapidly changed in recent decades, starting with our diet, yet including our movement patterns, our sleep patterns, our stress levels, and exposure to non-natural chemicals. Things are not as they once were. The environment for the cells of the average modern human is now radically different from what the cells expect and need. This evolutionary mismatch is tipping normal metabolic function into dysfunction, bad energy. So I won't go on and read much more here, but that just kind of gives you an idea of what she defining, her definitions of good and bad energy.
Right. Yeah. So bad, and the very last line of that says it's a terrible trickle up. Bad energy leads to broken cells, broken organs, broken bodies, and the pain you feel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So bottom line, she's saying it all starts on a cellular level.
Yeah. And it's all about the mitochondria, what we studied about in school, and we all remember the
powerhouse
mitochondria,
of the
powerhouse of the cell. That's what powers you. I don't know about you guys, but when I was going through one of my sickest, I put that in quotes because that's such a range of things, but I just felt inflamed. I was inflamed, and I was just feeling sick, and I was overweight and just feeling awful. Even walking up the stairs, I would think in my head, like, I just feel like I don't even have the energy. Like, I don't even have the ability, even after I just ate, to have enough energy to walk up the stairs. It's that cellular level, and you can feel it. And you go to your doctor and you tell them, I'm having chronic fatigue, and they just,
Right.
I've made a little note over here, why did my persistent complaints of fatigue never prod my doctor to address it. Why did that never spark questions in their
And they
mind?
say they don't know what causes it.
Yeah, it's
Because
just
like
like,
I've
well,
heard
you
them
got
say,
chronic fatigue.
and I'm not sure. Yeah, it's sort of like if other things are ruled out, they just lump it all under chronic fatigue. So it's just sort of like a catch-all.
It's almost like we just expect that as people get older, they're just going to feel awful. And
Yeah.
you're just getting older. But that's not true. And we
No.
all
Right.
know that now,
Right.
and it's like
Well,
once your eyes have been opened, you can't go back. Thank
Right. You
goodness.
can't shut them again.
Yeah. And then you can't shut up about it.
right.
Well, didn't she say, I think it might be in the next chapter, but didn't she say somewhere that right now the number one chief complaint for doctor visits is being tired?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was kind of
So-
stunned by that.
It just, I don't know. Just the whole like simplicity of the questioning that it would require to actually address that chronic fatigue to me is just so common sense. Like, why can we not use our common sense in medicine? Yes, we know that you know things on a cellular level. And because you do, you should understand that, I don't understand why we can't do that. I don't know why like we always say, when you take your dog to the vet, what's the first thing they're going to ask? What are you feeding this dog?
What are you
You got a
feeding it?
problem. What are
Yeah.
you feeding this dog? My dog's laying around. It's got chronic fatigue. It'll never get up and chase a ball. Well, what are you feeding the dog?
What are you feeding it?
It's
That's right.
common sense. Like, why is that
Maybe
so?
we should go to see a vet.
Yeah. My patient the other day told me that her daughter was a vet, or her granddaughter was a vet. And I said, well, I think I'd like to actually go see a vet myself because they might be able to help me.
That's right. At least they'll ask you what you've been eating.
Yeah. And,
But
I'm
she
not going to
said,
take any pills most likely. So
basically, what you said, she says at the end of page 13, the way we practice medicine, however, has not caught up with this root cause understanding. We still treat the organ specific results of bad energy, not the bad energy itself.
yeah.
So that's exactly what we've been talking about. It's like we basically we treat the symptom, not the cause.
Mhm.
And I highlighted a little paragraph here. It's not a whole paragraph, but just some pieces here. She said, compared to 100 years ago, we're consuming astronomically more sugar, which we know from our other books we've read and just, from being in the low carb community, i.e. up to 3,000% more liquid fructose. Wow. Working in more sedentary jobs and sleeping 25% less. We're also exposed to over 80,000 synthetic chemicals in our food, water, and air. As a result of all these factors and many others, our cells have stopped being able to make energy the way that they should. So the result, cellular dysfunction throughout our bodies, showing up as the explosion of chronic symptoms and diseases we are facing today. Our body has simple ways to show us whether we have brewing metabolic dysfunction, increasing waist size, suboptimal cholesterol levels, high fasting glucose, and elevated blood pressure. And she says her mom experienced all of them, and 93% of Americans are in the danger zone on at least one metabolic marker. 93%. Wake up, people. It's the food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We just were not meant to eat what we're eating.
No.
And
they
it's
shouldn't be allowed to make
terrible
it.
that you
That's
don't.
what's messed up.
You just don't. I mean, I know before I started looking into this diet stuff, I mean, it just didn't occur to me that there would be stuff. I mean, I knew like about carbs and stuff to an extent because I had gestational diabetes back in the 80s. But like in terms of like all the other stuff, all the processed foods and stuff, I mean, obviously, candy bars are bad for you or, but some of the stuff that they say is healthy, you just think, oh, well, they're allowed to sell it. And, it's kind of like the pet food I was talking about the other week. You know, you just wouldn't think that they would be selling stuff that's going to give your cat diabetes, you know, with
Right.
carrots and peas in it.
And I think we
Right.
can look at it as two different categories of food. Like that sweet candy bar, those dessert things, that's one thing, okay?
Yeah,
We all know that we can't overdo that. Like if
right.
we're just eating a standard American diet. But why are they allowed to put so many like normal foods, right? That we
Mhm.
that we just think, "Oh, that's just food like you could eat for a meal."
Yeah.
That are so unhealthy.
Seed
Like,
oils all
you
in them
know,
suckers.
I don't think
Yeah.
people have a problem with eating too many desserts. You
Right.
know? I mean, some people might, but I think people have a problem with being able to distinguish what is actually food.
And then
What
the
is actually something
ingredients
that's
have
nourishing
so
for my
many
body.
synonyms, like they're known as, like there's so many terms for sugar. So if you don't know what all those terms are, you might not even realize you're getting sugar in it.
Right.
And they put wheat in stuff like in soups. I remember early in my journey, I was looking at the back of a can of soup, and it had like wheat was one of the, and I'm like, why is wheat in in this can of soup that wasn't even related? It was
It
just that
wasn't
they
even
just stick
pasta
stuff
in it
in
or
there.
hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, Kim, you mentioned, wake up, it's the food. And so even all these 80,000 chemicals, how much of that is because of the manufacturing of the food?
Yeah.
It's not just the food, and the production of the food creates so many of these chemicals and the plastics and everything that we're exposed to. So if it's not ingesting the food itself, it's something that goes into the process of making the food and bringing it to market for us. That's part of the problem. So either directly or indirectly, it's the food
Yeah.
in most cases.
And then let's see here. We're almost through the introduction, but another thing that really struck me in the introduction was she said, despite surgically treating inflamed tissues of the head and neck day in and day out, not once ever was I taught what causes the inflammation in the human body or about its connection to the inflammatory chronic diseases so many Americans are facing today. So,
Yeah.
and she said just about every condition that she treated had an inflammatory, it was an itis, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. You ready to go on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So part 1 actually includes the first 3 chapters. So part 1 is called The Truth About Energy. And then chapter 1 is called Siloed Health versus Energy-Centric Health.
And
So
this is where she talks about, and I was just like, she said, at the end of medical school, I had to choose one of 42 specialties, one part of the body to devote my life to.
Well,
That right there was just like mic drop. I mean, there's a big part of the problem right there.
yeah. This is Cynthia, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
Cynthia.
Okay.
We become too smart for our own good. Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. Like we were talking about, was it last week or one of the sessions where we were talking about how the industrialization seemed like it was a good thing and we were advancing as a society, but it really has ended up to come back and bite us in the butt for sure, health wise.
It's sort of like the runaway stagecoach, I think it could have been a good thing, but it just ran away from us. And I mean, it just went in all these wild directions and it just got out of control.
Yeah, definitely. And she then talks about
sorry, Lynn, but it kind of feels like how we're dealing with AI now. And it's like, this is the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Guys, we've had other things in the past we've had to deal with that this could go one of two ways, or more.
Yep.
Oh yeah, there's good parts, but it could definitely get out of control for sure. So, but she talks about, speaking of the specialties, you mentioned the 482 specialties, then she's talking about the subspecialties. She said that after you complete your training in a specialty, you can, then she'd be eligible to even divide even more into a subspecialty within the subspecialty. I didn't realize how many subspecialties there are within ENT, but it makes sense. She said you can focus solely on the nose or the larynx, or she said the otologist focuses solely on the 3 tiny bones of the inner ear plus the cochlea and eardrum. You can specialize in head and neck cancer. So there's all these subspecialties. So they get so very narrowly focused that, it's no wonder that they don't think about looking at the rest of your body. And a good doctor hopefully will. I mean, when I was working in GI, the doctors seem to be pretty good about assessing for other things besides just strict GI function that could be impacting what's going on. So they did thyroid tests, and they looked at their all their blood work and their, everything that the primary doctors did. And, so I felt they were pretty good about at least taking a look at other factors. So I don't know that the doctors are that focused that they're completely unaware of the body as a whole. I haven't found that in the doctors that I've worked with. But once they look at what your primary doctor has done and all the other specialists have done, then they really narrow in.
Well, and I feel like it depends on which system we're talking about, like which specialty are we talking about? Because I think an ENT doc or, dental or, something that's like really GI, it affects a lot of things. And, that
a lot of things affect GI. Yeah.
Yeah. And that includes your immune system in that. And like, there's just so many different things that are included in that. I think that they are probably more likely to understand the implications of like foods that you eat, things like that.
Well, you would think, but you'd be amazed at how many of my patients were telling me that the doctor said that they didn't have to change their diet.
Wow.
And especially with autoimmune disease, it was there, not so much with things like IBS and, like stomach issues and GERD and gallbladder, those things. The doctor would give them some dietary advice and even liver, issues with the liver. But autoimmune disease, it was like almost across the board. The patients would say, yeah, the doctor said, as long as I'm not in a flare, I don't have to modify my diet.
And you just have it. Like, it's just, and the thing that gets me is the hereditary. Like, well, it's just hereditary. Your mom had it and you've just got it. And that's the end of that, That's what kills me.
Yeah.
Hey, Simpson.
Hey there. Good to see you here. So, okay. So she talks a lot about inflammation. Let's see, this chapter was so packed.
Yes, it was.
Where do you want to start talking about this? Because this is a lot.
Let's see here. So she talks about peeling back the layers, what causes disease, and how invisible inflammation is everywhere all at once. So, basically, as we were talking about before, it's everywhere all at once. So it could affect your vessels. It could give you migraines. It could affect your mental health. It could, it's going to be different for everybody. And then wherever these symptoms present is what we will classify. Oh, it's this disease or it's that disease. And that always kind of annoys me because you see so many times, like when you're looking at a patient's history, you see so many times like, oh, they've got, this and this and this and this. And it's like, wait a minute. which one do they really have? Because some of the symptoms are so overlapping. And then it led me to think, like, wait a minute, they don't have any of them. They've got a problem systemically that's presenting as this symptom, that symptom, whatever. We're just calling it that. The body doesn't know the difference between, lupus and Sjogren's or RA. I mean, that's why the symptoms are so overlapping, because it's the same problem. And
Yeah.
I don't understand why we don't make that
Yeah,
connection.
it's just where it's presenting on each individual person.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, what, if you want to take it even a step further, like, what's behind one person's tendency to have it appear in one particular body part versus another person, it appears in a different body part. Like,
Yeah. And
there's
that's
got to
probably
be
genetics, that's probably genetic predisposition to have a more of a, what my mom would call a weakness. She would say, I think you have kind of a weakness in your lungs. And the reason why she said that was because when I was a child, I always got chronic bronchitis. I would just be coughing all the time. I had asthma-like symptoms, but no actual asthma, and she just knew that that's where my inflammation presented itself. Any little thing, even now, if I consume, a little bit of sugar, or I, were to go out and have an ice cream or something, which I don't really do that often, but if I were to do that, the next morning I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, I got a little bit of stuff in my chest. That's where it presents on me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, all right. So let's see. So she talks about trouble where it's hard to see metabolism, mitochondria, and malfunction. She talks about the chronic inflammation is often a response to our body's cells feeling threatened by being persistently overpowered due to bad energy processes, which are like the food, the environmental toxins, the stress, the lack of sleep, the sedentary lifestyle. That she says it's almost like she gives the cells a personality. Did you guys kind of feel that way?
Yeah, because like she was like an underpowered cell, struggling to make energy, just sputtering along through its daily work, So yeah.
Yeah, the way she works
Makes it
things makes it like,
relatable.
yeah, like she gives the cell its own personality, and like it's a little, little critter out there in there inside our bodies trying to survive and serve us, right?
I love that.
A little critter.
Yeah. But she talks about, over being underpowered because of all this other stuff. And she talks about this flailing cell, like it's struggling, it's flailing, sends out chemical alarm signals to recruit the immune system to help it. But the immune system causes immense collateral damage to the cell. It says creating a literal war within the body to protect itself from itself that results in worse symptoms. This is the key reason why chronic inflammation typically goes in lockstep with metabolic dysfunction and widespread symptoms. So your cell is just struggling to do its job because of all this extra stuff that it has to deal with.
What I thought was fascinating was she says, even though ATP is a microscopic molecule, the average human produces about 88 cumulative pounds of it a day.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah,
so
when
you
she
can
says
imagine how much of
it's
that
like
would be
using
effective.
Yeah, like it makes it use it. So it's not like, oh, you got an extra 88 pounds you're lugging around. No, it's a process. It makes it and then it uses it, makes it, uses it. But that's still pretty incredible.
But you can imagine if you had if you had mitochondrial dysfunction, which anytime you have metabolic issues, you do usually have some level of mitochondrial dysfunction. It's I mean, you can imagine how big of a problem that would be. You know, if they're microscopic cells and your body is making and requiring 88 pounds of it a day, like that's going to put a huge damper on what you're able to do.
Yeah,
And
and
no
then if they
wonder you
can't
feel
make it,
tired.
so if they can't make all the ATP that you need, then you have no energy. You are too tired to go up the stairs or, you know, whatever it is that you need to do.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so she goes through like 7 different things that the are these things that the cells do. Let's see. She says the main things that a cell needs for optimal functioning can be grouped into 7 categories of activity. All require ATP and therefore good energy to occur properly. So she brings up 7 functions of the cell. And so like the first one is to make proteins. And of course the proteins are very important. She said that they can be receptors on the surface of cells, channels through which things like glucose can flow into and out of the cell, structural scaffolding inside the cell to give it shape and help it move, regulators. I mean, there's all these things that she brings up that why we need that protein. But it's the structural, mechanical, and signaling workhorses in the cell.
Yeah,
So I guess
activate
your
or
body is
suppress genes is one big thing. They sit on the DNA and activate or suppress genes. I mean, that's a biggie.
I mean, just about everything in your body is a protein of some type, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, proteins are everywhere, and they have a lot of roles in the body for sure. So the cells also repair, regulate, and replicate DNA. So we learned about like mitosis and meiosis in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cell division, replication, and so it's important to make sure that when they do, the cells are supposed to be able to repair any damage to the DNA to prevent mutations that can turn into things like cancer and other diseases. So it's important to make sure your cells are working properly. Otherwise, you end up having these mutations that keep going rampant. Next thing you know, there's cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all cancer is a mutation of the cell that just continues to replicate unchecked. So
she says often that we are the mother to ourselves.
Yes.
We have to treat ourselves as if they are our children.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can sense that in the way she writes about the cells in this book. Yeah. Yeah. Like they're our children, but as far as us caring for them, but she kind of almost makes it seem like we're their children and that they're taking care of us.
Well, they are.
Yep, they are. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of a synergistic relationship, right? They're working hard to take care of us. So we need to make sure that we're doing the things to give them what they need.
Yeah.
To do their job. Like a good boss, right?
Yeah. And then the number 2 was repair, regulate, and replicate DNA. So the cells are responsible for replicating their DNA to ensure that each new cell has a complete copy of the genetic material during the process of cell division. And then also repair, prevent mutations. And they have complex mechanisms for modifying the folding and 3-dimensional structures of the genome through epigenetic changes, which regulate which genes are expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see here.
And that ties in, I'm sure, as to what symptoms people get then whenever their mitochondria are malfunctioning.
Yeah.
It's whatever genes are not expressed or which ones are expressed.
Yeah. And different things as we've learned in probably just studying other low carb books, the epigenetic changes, it's kind of like this gene or like smoking, for example, may switch on this gene, that would predispose you to lung cancer or, something else. But yeah, so it's kind of like you have that gene, you have that capability, but it's not switched on until you're exposed to something else in the environment, which epigenetics means above the genes. So it's like, something that's outside that's kind of influencing or switching on that specific gene.
Yeah.
And
when it comes
where
to
it can be switched on, it can
mutations,
also be switched off,
right.
by good behavior.
Right. And when it comes to mutations, I mean, our cells do have mutations, and we have our immune system can handle that typically. But if you got so many cell mutations that your immune system knows how to handle it as mutant cell. I mean, we have helper T cells. Helper T cells go around and they tag the mutant cells. And then we've got killer T cells that go around and find those tag cells and destroy them. But if you get so much of that going on, your immune system can't keep up, then that's when you end up with problems. And so you're putting too much of a load on your immune system to try to even keep up with it. So,
but mutations and epigenetics are two different things.
Right.
So the epigenetics is defined as the heritable changes in gene expression that are unlike mutations. So those are alterations in the sequence of the DNA. So just to clarify.
Okay. Yeah. So she talks about cell signaling, such as producing insulin was an example that she brought. That cells, they constantly communicate with other cells in the body through various signaling pathways in which they receive and transmit information through chemical signals like hormones, neurotransmitters, and electrical impulses. So part of the normal functioning is to be able to have that communication go on. So we don't, and then transporting, she said the cells move molecules, molecular material all around the inside of the cells for functioning. I remember learning about that in biology.
The vesicle.
Yeah, the Golgi bodies and all that stuff.
I thought it was wild the way she was saying that some of the immune cells will actually crawl through the organ by extending finger-like projections until it reaches the site of the threat where it needs to do its work. Wow. That's
humanizing it, right?
Almost unbelievable that it has the ability to do that, It's just wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Arlene.
Hey, Arlene. Good to see ya. So homeostasis, they're constantly working on maintaining healthy operating conditions like pH, salt concentration, gradients of charged molecules can generate electrical impulses and temperature. So it help to keep our body in homeostasis, which is important. And then cell waste cleanup and autophagy, which we've, hear about autophagy. I hear about it in relation to fasting a lot, like getting your body into that autophagy state. Basically, it's self-eating. It's clearing out all the damaged parts. Yeah. And
then when the mitochondria do it, it's called mitophagy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. That the mitochondria actually have their own, cleanup, which is, I guess it makes sense.
So it makes you realize that, when you've been diagnosed with mitochondrial dysfunction, as I had, it's been like 3 years ago now, but I think I'm quite a bit better with that. But fasting would actually help to, promote a little healing there, get some mitophagy going. Not that it doesn't happen anyway, but, just you can speed up the rate.
I wonder if that's because you're taking your body's reserves away from digestion so it can focus better on some of these repair processes.
It seems that I've heard that somewhere.
I think
I
it's
couldn't tell you where.
I think it's also like the building up versus the breaking down. You know how you can't have both of those happen at once? You can't
True.
build and break down at the same time. So during fasting, there's a breaking down, and a cleanup.
Yeah.
That makes
Maybe
sense.
Cynthia can let us know. Maybe Cynthia can let us know if we're on track with that one.
Yeah.
So, and then the last thing was metabolism, of course. It's production of energy, which is required, because obviously we require energy. And it says even this requires energy to work. So, so I had underlined when the mitochondria do not have the right conditions or they get inundated with the wrong materials in the wrong amounts, they don't produce enough ATP for the cells to do their job. So, yeah. So maybe that's why the fasting is like we're withholding. Yeah, definitely we're withholding anything bad. If you're not eating really well and you fast, you're definitely withholding adding more to the bad, things that damage the cell for sure. Okay.
And then, of course,
So
she gets into the modern diets and lifestyles are synergistically ravaging our mitochondria. And then she goes into how exactly does the environment we live in today ravage our mitochondria? The answer comes down to 10 main factors. And of course, she's going to go into a lot more detail in part 2, but she gives some summary here. And the first one of those is chronic overnutrition. And she says that refers to consuming more calories and macronutrients than the body needs over an extended period. This can lead to mitochondrial dysfunction in several ways. And she says we eat approximately 20% more calories than we did 100 years ago, and 700 to 3,000% more fructose. There's that scary number again.
Yeah.
That's just.
Yeah.
And then she says here, all of which the body must process. And this really got me to thinking. Imagine being asked to do 700 to 3,000% more work than you normally do daily. So there again, she's personifying it, but then you understand. I mean, you really get it. And I
that's why our cells are worn out.
And she said also when the mitochondria are taxed with the burden of trying to convert so much excess food to energy, they produce and release reactive molecules called free radicals. And those are negatively charged, highly reactive electrons that seeks to neutralize itself by binding to other structures in the mitochondria and cell, and in doing so causes significant damage.
Yeah, and we talked about free radicals at the end of the last book.
Yeah, we did.
And the oxidative stress that occurs.
Everything always comes full circle for these books.
It does. Yeah, it does, definitely.
But that's reassuring.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because she talked about, number one was the overnutrition, but then number 2 was nutrient deficiencies. So which was interesting.
Basically the food we're eating doesn't have any nutrition in it.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did not agree with her on this is she talked about this is partly because of the soil depletion, which I agree with, and lack of diversity in our diets. I don't agree with the lack of diversity because obviously, if we're talking about a species appropriate diet, there is no species on Earth other than human beings that eat a diverse diet, and we're the ones that are unhealthy.
Well, if you're trying to live off of plants, you do need a diverse.
Well,
you do need a lot of diversity. So a lot of these people that are very plant focused, yes, they need a large diversity there because they're not
and a lot of
otherwise. Yeah.
and a lot of supplements.
Mhm.
Yes. But like Dr. Berry talks about, like we do not need a diverse diet. We just need to make sure the things we're eating are the right things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it contains the right, micronutrients, and then we should be good, right? So it's just a matter of knowing what nutrients you can get from what foods. And I think
But she
that's
does
another
mention-
problem is we don't know that. Like most people do not know that at all.
Yeah. And she mentions most of our calories come from refined forms of commodity crops like wheat, soy, and corn, all of which are micronutrient deficient and doubly cause problems by flooding our bodies with a dense excess of carbohydrates and inflammatory fats. So at least we agree that we don't need to be eating those things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. And so a lot of the things that most people are deficient in, that she brings up the CoQ10, she
Mhm.
brings up, the selenium, magnesium, zinc, B vitamins. A lot of these we're getting in the
Yeah.
carnivore foods
Yeah.
that we are eating. So
And then,
it's really not the carnivores that have the nutrient deficiencies.
And then, a lot of us aren't taking hardly any medications anymore either. And
Right.
the CoQ10, if you're taking, I think I can't remember exactly how much he said, but Dr. Berry said like for each medication you're taking, especially if it's a statin, you need to be supplementing, replacing that CoQ10, because a lot of these prescription medications just deplete your body of that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And one of the books, maybe it was the last one, I'm not sure which one, talked about how CoQ10 is actually in meat. That you can get, I guess what you need by eating meat. I know so much is in egg yolks for sure. Just tons of nutrients in egg yolks. Yeah, definitely. So I had most of my little notes in the margin were about this next section. And because the next section she talked about was microbiome issues. And of course, I recently started listening a little bit more to Bart K. And so I'm like, his voice is in my head while I'm reading this section.
Oh, I love his voice. He's just,
Yeah.
in the way he's just like,
no,
good,
I listened to him recently talk about, or at least respond to someone who was talking about the microbiome. And he's like, no, we don't know anything about the microbiome. We really don't.
If we did, we would know what to do to fix it, but we don't.
Right.
Yeah, it adapts, right? We know that it adapts very quickly to whatever you're eating. But she did talk about a healthy, flourishing gut microbiome, and she talked about feeding it with microbiome supportive foods, which I'm sure she means plants.
I mean, I didn't take it that way. From me, meat supports my microbiome.
I'm assuming she was talking
with keeping my candida at bay. If I feed my body meat, it's just like happy as can be.
Me too. My gut issues have resolved by just eating meat.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if I want to have a gut, I'm sorry, Lynn, but if I want to have a gut issue, all I got to do is have like some potato or even sometimes different types of lettuce. And the next day I'm going to have a gut issue.
Oh, I can't tell you how many of my GI patients were like, lettuce just killed them. It's like, it's like rip their gut up for sure. So but one of the things that and it may be the way I was reading it, but she talked about postbiotic molecules such as short chain fatty acids are essential for the proper function of mitochondria and to protect mitochondria against oxidative stress. She didn't really go into a lot of detail about this, but I'm like, okay, short chain fatty acids are essential for proper function of the mitochondria. Now I looked them up. They're found in vegetables, fruits, and legumes. Okay. So you could imply that therefore we need to be eating fruits, vegetables, and legumes. So I went back to the whole Krebs cycle, and all the carnitine. The actual input is our long chain fatty acids into the cycle, and that comes from meat. There's some other things that it comes from, but that's the fatty acids found in meat. And the long chain fatty acids are what actually enters the cycle, and they get broken down into short chain fatty acids. If we are consuming the short chain fatty acids, that's not what gets into the cycle. It's the long chains that get into the cycle.
It's not in the form that we need it to be.
Right.
Even though it's the same thing.
Our cells, our mitochondria will do the job of breaking the long chains down into short chains. We do not need to be feeding ourselves short chain fatty acids. We need to be feeding ourselves long chain fatty acids to feed the process.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my little thing that I went down a little rabbit hole because I wanted to
It's going to take me a while to process that, Lynn. I'll be listening to it later and I'll be like, oh, okay. Because I thought I knew the Krebs cycle pretty well, but I'm just like, I mean, not pretty well, but like
and it may not even be the Krebs cycle I was looking at, but it was whatever cycle it goes into where you get the input, maybe whatever goes into the cell in order to get into the process of converting.
That should be the Krebs cycle, right?
It should be the Krebs cycle. I know there's several
sugars
cycles. Yeah,
but,
I mean, L-carnitine plays a role, and it goes through all these processes to break down into short chain fatty acids inside of our
acid cycle. Is it the same thing, or is that a part? I guess that's like a part in it.
I think that's another part of it.
It's way too much biochemistry.
Yeah, but the basic takeaway was that because she didn't really go into any more detail, you could easily read this and go, oh, well, if short chain fatty acids are essential for the proper function of the mitochondria, and short chain fatty acids are what's in fruit, vegetables, and legumes, then therefore we should be eating fruits, vegetables, and legumes.
Right.
And so that's why I'm like, no,
she skipped the part.
She skipped the part, right? Like our cells will break down and create the short chain fatty acids on their own if we feed it the long chain fatty acids, which are found in meat.
Well, that makes sense. You would think a long chain could be broken down into a short chain, right?
Correct. Which is what our cells naturally do.
I'm going to have to go to Bart Kay's channel and do a little search. See if he's got anything to say about that.
Yeah. So that was kind of like give a little thing that I'm like, okay, I got to make sure I'm clear on this, because somebody reading this would draw the wrong conclusion about what you should be eating.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like the whole glucose thing. People say your cells need glucose, and so they think you're supposed to eat glucose, when in reality, what you're supposed to do is your body can convert glucose when it needs it. So
Correct.
it's, so they're again, they're skipping a step in that too.
Exactly. Perfect example. Like our body produces its own glucose.
Yeah. So we don't
need to feed it glucose. Right. Just like our body produces its own short chain fatty acids, we just need to feed it the long chain. So anyway, so that was my little soapbox I needed to get up on.
Well, and I think just like a lot of things, like the concept of being on a low carb diet has to be factored into this stuff, like most of these people are speaking from the perspective of a, diverse diet. So it's going to be a little different for people who are on a low carb diet.
Well, and honestly, this book, because she's not necessarily, low carb in her, in her approach, this might be really good for us to be able to dig in.
Yeah.
And see what we need to challenge, see what we need to research. Just like this kind of triggered me to go, okay, I got to dig in further. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. We may find that that's going to happen off and on throughout the book. Yeah.
So the next one is sedentary lifestyle. That's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
movement is a powerful signal to the cells that they need to produce more energy for the muscles to do work. And as such, physical activity has a relationship with stimulating the function and number of mitochondria in the cells in a positive way through the upregulation of several genes and hormonal pathways. Additionally, exercise stimulates our body to generate antioxidant molecules, which we need for all those free radicals, right? And
Mhm.
I didn't
when
know
we're
that.
antioxidants are what helps get rid of the free radicals.
Yeah. I just didn't know that exercise makes you produce antioxidants.
Oh, yeah. I need to do more exercise. You know,
You
I
can
know that. Huh?
join our challenge.
What is it?
Join the me and Lindy. Go look on my
Oh,
on my
yeah. I heard you
channel.
talking about that before.
Yeah, we started a new one, and it's fun.
Okay. Well,
So
I paid close attention when the doctors of our community were saying, "Oh, you can't out exercise a bad diet, and diet's 80%." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, 80%." And so I think I took that a little far. Instead of saying, "Wait a minute, we could probably help out a little 20% here if we were to add some exercise." And, I'm not someone who just loves to
yeah,
exercise, but I need to get into it.
yeah. Well, we're doing a fun one,
Well, I might have to check it out then.
and it doesn't take a lot of time. So
And
you
then
can do it in
chronic
your house.
stress. Okay. Yeah, that's important for me because I'm definitely not wasting my money on a gym membership again. I've
No
learned my
equipment needed.
lesson multiple times.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no equipment needed. Just your body
Oh, good.
and the video.
So the next one is chronic stress.
Oh, hang on. Simpsons. We got a little side conversation here. Simpsons saying, "Wait, are you talking about the arm burn video, Lynn? I would not say it's fun." No, I'm not. Because
That's funny.
that was the previous challenge. We started a new challenge. So go check out the Fridays live stream that Lindy and I did, and you'll see the new challenge that we started, and it is fun. So we are still doing the arms I'm doing on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we're doing that. And then we're adding see, Arlene yes, it's fun. We're adding a new one. So,
Okay, I'm going to
so
check
go
it
check
out
it out.
then.
Yeah.
Chronic stress, which this is a big problem for me, I think, especially with the current position that I do at work. And I'm going down because I'm a charge nurse in a level 1 trauma recovery room. So it's very stressful. So I'm going down to, I'm at 2 days a week, but I'm going to go down to 1 day a week. So
Oh, wow.
I'll be taking care of patients the other 2, which that's cool with me. That'll be fine. So I think that will help decrease my stress a little, which should help me.
Yeah.
But prolonged stress can lead to mitochondrial dysfunction through several mechanisms. The first is that it activates the release of the stress hormone cortisol, which is a steroid hormone that can directly damage the mitochondria. Cortisol is known to inhibit the expression of genes involved in the production of new mitochondria, thus reducing the number of mitochondria in the cell, leading to less energy production. Excess cortisol also generates increased free radicals, in part by inhibiting the production of antioxidants. So
Interesting.
Mhm.
That darn cortisol. And how do we avoid the stress? It's like, if you can't avoid it, you got to be able to. You are teaming yourself with
I
your
don't
idea.
understand this comment, but
You know why? It's because this challenge that we did for the last 4 weeks was this arm workout, and it was freaking hard. So yeah, so she was saying earlier that she did the arm workout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
no,
she said earlier she would not say it's fun. Okay.
that's right.
Okay.
No, it's not. It's torture. I mean, it works. It works, but it is
Hey.
torture.
I'm not afraid of a little hard work, as long as I know I'm going to get something out of it.
Oh yeah, we've definitely are hearing a lot of people saying that we're trying to get rid of the arm flap,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
you
you
know,
talking about
the
that.
bat wings. Yeah. So we've actually been hearing people talking about how they're actually measuring and noticing an improvement. So,
That's cool.
but
Yeah.
it's the arm one is a very difficult workout.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So the next is medication and drugs. Many medications hurt the function of the mitochondria.
Mhm.
These include several antibiotics, chemotherapy, drugs, antiretroviral drugs, statins, beta blockers, and high blood pressure medications called calcium channel blockers. Alcohol, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and ketamine may also negatively impact mitochondria.
I'd be willing to bet that they do. I don't think that's a may or a may not, as Dr. Berry would say. I think.
well, the scary thing is several of those drugs are incredibly commonly used. I mean, if you forget, I mean, forget chemo and antiretrovirals. There's a subset of the people that are on those, but antibiotics are very frequently prescribed. Statins, beta blockers, and calcium channel blockers are incredibly common.
Yes.
And yeah, and tons of people drink alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the antibiotics, I mean, the antibiotics are just like thrown like they're candy, Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh, and sleep
Yeah.
deprivation. That's one that in the past I've been able to identify with.
Yeah. That's my current struggle.
Yeah. I'm getting
I have
better
absolutely
with it.
no problem
My cat
sleeping.
was, he would get up in the night. Either he would think he was hungry or else he would get sick. And so it was like I had a baby that I was
Aw.
taking care of, and so that was pretty tough. So now I think I'm finally starting to get back into a good sleep rhythm, and I can tell the difference with that. But that definitely, yeah, I'm sure it affected my mitochondria, because there were some days, and I mean, I'm carnivore, and I know that my clarity and everything is so much better, but you just know when you don't have enough sleep. You can just tell.
Yeah.
Well, my husband gets up at 1:45 in the morning. He starts work at 3.
Wow.
And so weekdays that I know that even if I sleep through his alarm, it's got to be bringing me out of my deep sleep.
Yeah. That's the middle of the night.
I know. It's a crazy schedule he has. But maybe I'll have to have him read this section, but I didn't know that sleep deprivation generates increased free radicals. So it's by 2 mechanisms. It activates cellular machinery that makes free radicals. It also inhibits the production of antioxidants. So it's a double negative.
It messes up all your hormones, your cortisol, your insulin, growth hormone, melatonin, which all of those interact with the mitochondria. And then also
I'm not ready
it disrupts
to sleep in our guest bedroom though.
It also disrupts the expression of genes involved in the production of new mitochondria and replication of mitochondria. So this is why, you can't do third shift. Like, especially as a nurse, I had to just say, that's it. It's affecting my health. Cannot do third shift for
I did it 1 year.
It takes years off of your life,
Yeah. Yeah, although grocery shopping at 3:00 in the morning is kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love being up that late, but it's especially like there's a difference between staying up till 2 or 3 and staying up till 7 a.m. You stay up till 7 a.m. or plus, because you got to get out of there at that point. You got to give a report and all that stuff. But your stomach is all messed up, even if you really haven't eaten much. It really does a number on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, number 8 is environmental toxins and pollutants. So, I mean, this is kind of self-evident. We all know that there are environmental toxins and pollutants everywhere, and they affect your mitochondria. And one of those also is alcohol. It's considered a mitochondrial toxin.
Yeah.
It's been shown to change the mitochondrial shape and function, damage mitochondrial DNA, generate oxidative stress, and impair the generation of new mitochondria. So
Yeah,
more reason to not have that healthy glass of wine every night.
that's right. And also, she brings up watch your nonstick cookware.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of us, I think, forget about is that Teflon, not good.
Especially if
good for
it's chipping away, you guess where it's at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's inside you.
So I think that number 9 is a huge, huge problem for me too. Artificial light and circadian disruption. So on our cell phones, portable digital devices, she says we're being exposed to constant sources of artificial blue light, which is now considered to be both a direct and indirect contributor to mitochondrial dysfunction. And exposure to intense light at unnatural times affects our circadian rhythms, which we knew that. And so compounding this, we now spend little time outdoors, depriving ourselves of viewing direct sunlight early in the morning, which is one of the best signals we can give our brains to reinforce our natural circadian rhythm. So, I mean, think about it. Like we're on our computers, we're on our phones. I have a bad habit of being on my phone too late.
Yeah, same.
Oh, yeah, good. Excellent.
I heard something recently. I don't know the validity of it, but I would guess that it's valid just by the other things I know. But a lot of these air fryers have a nonstick coating on them. So, you
True.
really want to watch what kind of air fryer you're using because that can get into your food. And I was listening to, it was a woman that did a short on YouTube, and she was talking about how her son had high levels of whatever chemical it was in his system. And, I would think that could probably make you sick especially like with me, I use my air fryer every day to make my steak.
Me too.
And so, and then also you want to mix it up a bit. Like it's probably not good to use one method of cooking every single time you eat. I know even with the cast iron skillet, it's not good to do that because that can really increase your iron. You're getting iron from that skillet. So I've always heard don't use a cast iron skillet every time you cook, I mean, it's good. It's good for you, but too much of a good thing is sometimes a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting things to think about. Wow. All right. So number 10 was thermoneutrality. This was interesting. So she talked about the hallmark of modern industrial life is spending most of our time indoors in relatively consistent ambient temperatures, a concept we refer to as thermoneutrality. So interestingly, she says experiencing swings in temperature is great for mitochondrial function. And we hear about cold plunges, right?
Yep.
People are taking these cold plunges, although I have also heard that you have to be careful if you have immune system autoimmune diseases, that you don't just go plunge yourself into 32 degree or, even 50 degree. I mean, I understand developing resilience for temperature fluctuations, but I would never tell anybody that's not metabolically healthy to just go do a cold plunge. I mean,
well, as a former heart nurse, that
Yeah.
you know what I'm getting ready to say, right, Lynn?
absolutely.
The people that go and get in the hot tub and then they get into the swimming pool and they have cardiovascular events and die. Like that's what that makes me think of. Like getting that cold like that. I don't know. I don't buy into that. That does not entice me at all. Now, I'll watch other people do it and I'm like, oh, I'm always a little worried for them because like, what if you had some sort of plaque that was just getting ready to break loose and you're just changing you're clamping down that quickly.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like that idea at all.
It makes me nervous too. I was listening to Robin Heron, Carnivorous Grandma. I think she was on, I think it might have been when she was on Carrie's channel just recently talking about their new fundraiser for the documentary, but she was talking about the cold plunge she did at Hack Your Health. And she talked about how bad she felt afterwards for a long time.
She said her memory
And
wasn't very good, right? After that
yes.
for a while.
Oh yeah.
And
And
that
so
makes
that's an
sense.
example. Yeah. Like not everybody can do that.
Well,
Can just
it
go
makes
do a
sense because, like, you know, when people have bypass surgery and they take their body temperature down so low, they're after a while they have what you call pump head, right? So
Yep.
for a while after the open heart surgery, those synapses are not firing, those neurons are not, you know, it's not quite right, and they
Right.
will just be thinking stuff that's way off, you know.
Yeah.
So they'll
Yeah,
be confused
definitely.
and all that.
Yeah.
So Arlene said that's what she was wondering. She was using her cast iron every day to cook her steak, but now she got a Ninja Never Stick pan from Walmart. So is the Ninja Never Stick, like, what kind of coating does it have on it?
Yeah, is that
If it's
ceramic?
if it's ceramic, I would think that's probably pretty safe. Another thing I wanted to add, and I noticed that a lot of the kids are doing this now, and I think it's because they don't want to clean the air fryers, but they're using aluminum foil in an air fryer to cook their food, and that is a big no-no because the melting point of aluminum is lower. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's around 400. But you want to, I was listening to Dr. Berry and he was saying, you know, you need to cook on something with a much higher melting point. You want to avoid
Yeah.
aluminum foil.
I
in your
use a
cooking.
liner, but I'm not 100% sure that it's the greatest. I haven't
I
dug
just
deep
clean
into.
mine and I switch them up. Like I have a
Mm.
stainless air fryer and I have two of the little stainless steel pans and then two of the little baskets. And I just put them in the dishwasher and rotate them out. And that way I don't have to worry about any extra stuff going into my body. Anyway, so
Okay.
let's see.
Okay. So yeah, I couldn't think for 12 hours. Yeah.
I don't like
That
that.
was
That worries
yeah,
me.
that worries me too. About the pan, it said it was free from all those chemicals, and it says induction pan. So it's probably ceramic.
Yeah, that's probably.
I gotta run and
Oh, I
answer
didn't
my
know you could
door.
do
My
that.
brother is at the door, but I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
Huh.
I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't either.
Interesting.
I'm just like
says
safe.
Ninja
So yeah, I
Foodie.
have the Ninja Foodie air fryer, but I do kind of worry about it because I don't really know. Like I don't think I looked that deeply into what it was made out of, and I end up using that thing a lot.
I'm guessing that my my air fryer grate is Teflon coated, but again, I use a liner, so I never put food directly on it. I don't know if it off gases or anything that could still be affecting the food.
There's just too many things to worry about in this world, guys.
I know. But you know, when it comes to the heat and the cold exposure, she talked about, you know, cold stimulates the body to generate more warmth by increasing mitochondrial activity and stimulates more ATP generation and use. She said heat exposure has been shown to activate heat shock proteins. I'd never heard of those before within cells, which can help protect mitochondria from damage and help to maintain their function. Heat shock proteins can also stimulate the production of new mitochondria and improve their efficiency in producing ATP. So, I mean, I have, because of my heat intolerance and because I would get mast cell reactions, and sometimes with really cold, I would get mast cell reactions. My approach to helping myself has been gradual exposure to warmer temperatures and to cooler temperatures. So like when it was wintertime, I'd go outside for a little bit just in, without a jacket. And if I started getting bad, we're too cold, I'd come back. But I slowly give myself those exposures. And I've done the same thing for heat. And I feel like I'm getting better as far as my resilience, but that's heat intolerance. I would never suggest that anybody just go cold turkey into super hot or super cold.
Yeah.
For you, 70-degree water may be a great cold plunge.
Yeah.
have
And
to
they
go-
say, a cold shower will do the same kind of thing. You don't have to get into an ice bath. You can
Right.
turn your
even
water on cold.
even a cool shower. Like I tried to do a cold shower a while, like maybe 8-9 months ago, and I had a mast cell reaction. But I learned that I had to gradually kind of lower the temperature gradually, and I've been okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap this. We were going like crazy long. This is why we didn't do 2 chapters.
I know. Can you imagine? We'd be on here for 4
goodness.
hours.
We'll be here till 10 o'clock tonight.
So the next title is blood sugar and insulin. Basically, when mitochondria are damaged by the factors listed above, they're not able to do their job of converting food energy into cellular energy properly. They become inefficient machines, causing things to back up, which is a big problem. Is there anything you want to pull out of this section?
I was interested in the top of the next page where it talks about the mitochondria not working properly. The conversion of fats and glucose to ATP becomes impaired, and these raw materials are stored as damaging fats inside the body. It's like almost reminds me of fatty liver, right? And talks about this, though, on a cellular level, that you get these fats stored inside the cell, and they basically kind of clog up the cell. Hello, my husband just popping in.
Hi.
How are we doing, ladies?
Great.
He's gotten to be
Pretty good. How are you?
gotten to be so bold. He just pops in on my recordings all the time
Probably
nowadays.
ready for you to get off of here.
He's like, enough already.
Maybe he wants to read the book with us.
I think so. That must be. But yeah, so it's basically, she said it blocks the cell signaling pathways because it's filled with this toxic fat, and it's so I thought that was really interesting.
Well, but then she says she refers to that as insulin resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's just a different. She explains it a little more detail, I think, of what it is rather than you've heard when they talk about insulin resistance, and it's basically that you just can't get any more into the cells, but she's going into more detail with why.
Right. Like why can't it get into the cells? It's because all this toxic sludge is basically blocking the signaling pathways that will allow it in.
It's
Right.
the cell's way of, the insulin resistance is the cell's way of protecting itself from getting flooded by all this excess energy.
Yeah, more than it can handle, because it's just she definitely went a level further in explaining insulin resistance on a cellular level.
Here's something
And that goes back to that whole like Krebs cycle, citric acid cycle stuff.
Here's
like
one
that
thing
Bart Kay video I was hitting.
I don't know why this hit me, but she said a simple example of glycation, because we've talked about glycation before and what that is, how it's the glucose gets sticky and starts sticking on things. And she says an example of glycation causing dysfunction is in how it generates wrinkles.
Oh yeah, that was interesting.
And
I was like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't make that connection.
I didn't either. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I guess it sticks to the collagen in our skin and damages its structural integrity, which is really interesting. And
it makes me wonder why I don't have way more wrinkles.
Well, and maybe that's why
not been nice to my body.
When you stop eating sugar, you age in reverse. People say, "Oh, you're looking younger and younger all the time." Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true.
I didn't really have that many to begin with, but that's genetics. A lot of that is genetics.
Oh yeah.
Just
You
the
should see my mom at
predisposition to
90.
be.
My mom at 90 had almost no wrinkles.
That's how my mother is, let's see, she's going to kill me if she hears this, which she won't, but she doesn't watch my stuff. But actually, I haven't even told my mom that I have this.
Really? Are you afraid she start watching it?
I'll say I make YouTube videos or I talk about this on YouTube, but I never say like, oh, by the way, mom, she knows I'm a carnivore and she knows I have a lot of friends on YouTube, but she doesn't know that I have a channel that is like over 1,000 people.
That's funny.
So
That
she's
is
not
funny.
really into that kind of thing. But anyway, so she's like, let's see, she was born in 49. So how old does that make her? 75 or
5?
I'm thinking 75. Anyway, the woman barely has a wrinkle on her. Like up until like a few years ago, I think maybe the stress of COVID might have given her a few around her eyes, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a genetic component for sure. So, but that's interesting. So, and I know that other things also cause wrinkles. I mean, people who smoke a lot of cigarettes, they age
Mhm.
prematurely, do a lot of, substances and stuff. They'll age
Yeah.
prematurely. So,
But that all, I think, ties in too with the damaging the mitochondria and, inflammation and all that.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. All right. I think I'm done with this chapter.
Yeah, I'm like, whew, we are. So I do want to read this one little part, okay?
Okay.
The trifecta of dysfunction inside our bodies that generates bad energy boils down to the 3 following things. 1, mitochondrial dysfunction, 2, chronic inflammation, and 3, oxidative stress. So,
Yes.
and then she starts talking about how to measure good energy.
Mm-hmm.
And she says metabolic syndrome is clinically defined as having 3 or more of the following traits: a fasting glucose of 100 or higher, a waistline of more than 35 inches for women and 40 inches for men, HDL cholesterol less than 40 for men and 50 for women, triglycerides of 150 or higher, and blood pressure of 130 over 85 or higher. And basically, so if you have that, you're tipping into the bad energy. And anything else y'all want to add?
Yeah, the very end is where she said it's not normal for the leading cause of visits to the doctor to be vague feelings of being tired.
Mm-hmm.
Which was what prompted me to write down that whole thing about why did nobody ever look into my persistent fatigue?
Yeah.
Right.
It's passed off as, oh, you have 4 boys. That's why.
That's right.
You have
That's
4
right.
kids. It depends on your personality. If you have 4 kids and your whole dream in life was to have children and you just like love every minute of it, that's a different thing than somebody who didn't plan to have 4 kids, and that might really stress them out,
Yeah. And you work and, it's a lot for sure.
Yeah, but you can't just go. I mean, the fact that I would go in and they would be like, oh, yeah, it's just you're a nurse and you have 4 kids, so that's why you're so tired. No, it wasn't. They didn't know me at all,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Happy.
All right. So I suggest we only do chapter 2 next week.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes, because we've already read it also, and it is equally long.
It is, yes. It's long. It's full of stuff. So hopefully we will
have
be able.
the introduction in this one, so that's
right. So we should not be going quite as long next week. We'll try to restrain ourselves.
Well,
my dogs won't quit barking. Sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, that's all right. All righty.
Okay, come see us at our YouTube channels. I'm at Carnivore Nurse Kim. Carrie is at My Meat Omorphosis with an O, and Lana's at Midlife Carnivore. come see us, and we'll
Yep.
see you next week for chapter 2.
Yeah, glad you're all
Goodbye,
here.
everybody. I'm glad y'all
Thank you,
came.
guys. Bye, guys.
Bye.